Okay, so you want to own an MMA promotion. Here's the pitch. You control who fights, when they fight, and what they earn. You own the footage forever. You don't play the game, you run the game. Here's the problem. Dana White bought the UFC for $2 million in 2001. Before he sold it 15 years later, he watched every single competitor he faced either go bankrupt, sell to him at a discount, or just disappear. The UFC didn't win because it had better fighters. It won because it had better contracts. And those contracts are what you're actually buying. Tier 1. Start regional. This is where every real promotion begins. A regional show in a casino ballroom or a minor league arena costs $50,000 to $150,000 to run. You're renting the venue, paying fighters $500 to $2,000 per bout, hiring referees, paying for the cage, buying medical staff for the night, and covering insurance. You'll attract a few hundred people, maybe stream it online, and lose money, consistently. Tier 2. Build something real. To operate at a level where television deals become possible, which is the only level where the economics actually work, you need $5 to $20 million. That's what it costs to sign fighters with name recognition, produce broadcast quality events, pay a matchmaking staff, run a marketing operation, and absorb the losses while you build a roster worth watching. Bellator burned through capital for years before Viacom bought it. The PFL raised over $100 million before its first event. Tier 3. Buy the market leader. When Endeavor purchased the UFC in 2016, they paid $4 billion. At the time, that was the largest acquisition in sports history. The UFC's revenue that year was roughly $700 million. They paid nearly 6 times revenue, not for what it was, but for what it controlled. Hidden costs nobody mentions. The fighter pipeline. Every top promotion runs an amateur feeder system, a reality show, or both. The UFC spent years funding The Ultimate Fighter, a reality show that cost millions to produce and functioned entirely as a talent recruiting tool. You don't just need events, you need a system that manufactures the athletes you'll eventually put on those events. Before you book a single fight, understand what you're actually selling. You are not in the sports business. You are in the exclusive rights business. Every fighter you sign comes with a contract that typically locks them in for 3 to 6 fights with a clause allowing the promotion to match any outside offer. Some fighters have spent 5 or 6 years trying to leave and couldn't. Jon Jones, Conor McGregor, Khabib Nurmagomedov, none of them fought for any other promotion during their prime years. Not because they were loyal, because the contract made it structurally impossible. You also need a television or streaming partner before you can scale. A regional promotion streaming on YouTube earns nothing meaningful. The UFC's deal with ESPN, signed in 2019 for approximately $1.5 billion over 5 years, transformed the economics overnight. Before ESPN, the UFC relied on pay-per-view as its primary revenue engine. After ESPN, it had a guaranteed floor regardless of how many people bought individual events. Getting that deal requires leverage. Leverage requires fighters people want to watch. And fighters people want to watch require years of development money you'll spend before earning a dollar back. A mid-size event, 10,000 people, a regional arena, generates gate revenue of $500,000 to $2 million. That sounds like real money until you look at the cost side. Fighter purses alone, across 24 to 30 fights on a card, run $300,000 to $600,000 at that level. Add venue rental, production, travel, medical, insurance, and you're at break even on a good night. PPV is where the leverage lives. UFC 229, Conor McGregor vs. Khabib Nurmagomedov, sold an estimated 2.4 million PPV buys at $64.99 per buy. That's roughly $155 million in PPV revenue for one night. After the cable and platform fees, typically 40 to 50% of gross, the UFC kept somewhere between $75 and $95 million from PPV alone. The gate at T-Mobile Arena added another $17.2 million. Sponsorship, licensing, and international broadcast rights added more on top. The total economic output of a single event was north of $100 million. McGregor made approximately $30 million. The promotion made the rest. This is the architecture. You pay 20% of what the event generates to the people who actually get punched. In the NFL, the players take 47% of revenue. NBA, 50%. UFC fighters, as a share of total promotion revenue, have historically taken between 18 and 22 cents on the dollar. The sport generates the revenue. The promotion owns the sport.
How that works. Fighter contracts include a show purse, paid for appearing, and a win bonus, paid for winning. A debuting UFC fighter might earn $10,000 to show and $10,000 to win. That's a $20,000 ceiling for someone competing at the highest level of the sport. Performance bonuses of $50,000 are handed out selectively. Sponsorship money, which used to go directly to fighters, was replaced in 2015 by a tiered Reebok deal that paid fighters $2,500 to $40,000 per event based on tenure, with the UFC collecting the sponsorship revenue centrally. The fighters generate the product. The promotion owns the product. First, the failures. Affliction Entertainment, 2008. Tom Atencio raised enough money to sign Fedor Emelianenko, widely considered the greatest heavyweight of all time at the time, pay him $2 million per fight, and run 2 PPV events. After the second show, Fedor was scheduled to fight Josh Barnett. Barnett tested positive for steroids before the event. Affliction canceled the card and folded the same week. Total losses, roughly $40 million. 2 shows in before they turned a profit on either one. Elite XC, same year. CBS Primetime, a network television deal that seemed like it would legitimize the sport for mainstream audiences. 8 months after their first CBS broadcast, Elite XC filed for bankruptcy. Their biggest star, Kimbo Slice, lost on live national television to an unknown backup fighter named Seth Petrozelli, who later implied he'd been told to keep the fight standing. The company was gone within weeks. Pride FC, the most important failure of all. Before the UFC dominated globally, Pride was the dominant MMA promotion in Japan. Fedor fought there. Wanderlei Silva built his legacy there. Their production was larger, their crowds were bigger, their fighters were better paid. Zuffa bought Pride in 2007 for approximately $70 million. Within a year, they had canceled every remaining Pride event, poached the top fighters onto UFC contracts, and systematically retired the brand. Pride didn't collapse from bad business. It was purchased and shut down on purpose, because the easiest way to eliminate a competitor in this industry is to simply buy it and turn off the lights. Now the success story. Lorenzo and Frank Fertitta, owners of Station Casinos, bought the UFC in January 2001 for $2 million. The sport had been banned on pay-per-view in most major cable markets, stripped from cable television, and was losing $1.5 million a month. In 2005, Dana White convinced them to fund The Ultimate Fighter on Spike TV. The finale of Season 1 drew the highest rating in Spike TV history. Within 3 years, the UFC was profitable. By 2016, Endeavor paid $4 billion for it. $2 million to $4 billion in 15 years. For context, if you had put $2 million into the S&P 500 in January 2001 and held for 15 years, you would have approximately $4.4 million. The Fertittas turned it into $4 billion. That is not a return. That is a category of outcome that has no name. Optimistic scenario, you raise $15 million, build a mid-level promotion over 5 years, sign a streaming deal worth $5 to $10 million per year, and develop 2 or 3 fighters with mainstream name recognition. At that point, your promotion is worth $30 to $50 million, 2 to 3 times what you put in, and you're either acquired by a larger player or keep running it as a profitable media business. The PFL model: slow, expensive, possible. Realistic scenario: you spend your first $5 million running regional shows nobody watches. You sign a fighter you believe in, promote them heavily, and they lose twice in a row. Your streaming deal falls through because the platform needs bigger names. You do what every second-tier promotion eventually does. You approach the UFC with a list of your best fighters and a price. They offer you a number that covers your debts and takes the assets. You get out. Your fighters sign UFC contracts. The brand is gone by the end of the quarter. Here's the actual punchline. The UFC is a fight promotion that is won by making sure as few fights as possible happen outside its walls. Every dollar spent on buying out Pride, folding Strikeforce, and signing exclusive contracts with every top athlete in the sport was a dollar spent on making the product irreplaceable. When Endeavor paid $4 billion for the UFC in 2016, they weren't buying events. They were buying the only legal structure in the world where the best fighters in the sport had no meaningful alternative. You don't own a promotion. You own a toll booth on the only road that goes anywhere. The fighters pay every time they pass through,
and there's nowhere else to go.